We want to encourage your employees to post on social media, talk about the brand, talk about the job, talk about the company.
I haven't been on Facebook in a while. What is she saying about me? I didn't know is never a legal defense.
Thank you.
Ever. Phone numbers.
Phone numbers. Happy podcast day.
Happy podcast day. What are we drinking today?
We are drinking High West Bourbon.
Ooh.
Straight from Park City, Utah, because if you know me, you know I spend a lot of time in Park City. And High West is near and dear to my heart because we watched them probably 5 years that it took to build the initial distillery in Old Town, because they literally took apart the entire house, the old house that they built it in, and numbered all the boards.
Wow.
And rebuilt it because it's a historic district. But it is an absolutely fabulous location. Of course, much higher production someplace else now, but it is one of our favorite places. And the food is always wonderful. The drinks are always wonderful. So I've got my High West glasses. You know, when they first started, we had to bring this stuff back in our snowboard boots. Now you can get it in Ohio.
I was going to say, does it have that classic Rick House smell? If you've been to bourbon country, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
We got to do that. I haven't done that.
You haven't done that yet?
No, I have not.
Oh
I
my
think of Louisville,
gosh.
but okay. Anyway,
all right, road trip.
Road trip.
Oh, now that is a smooth one.
It's nice, isn't it?
Yeah. Something very interesting on the back end, but I'm not sophisticated enough to tell you exactly what it is, but that's a good one.
Yep. It's a keeper.
Absolutely. Well, what are we talking about on the podcast today?
So one of the things I like to encourage my clients about is employee advocacy. And that's sort of an ambiguous term, I feel, but employee advocacy is encouraging your employees. You know, all of those things are working. We want to encourage your employees to post on social media, talk about the brand, talk about the job, talk about the company, because that's real.
Absolutely. And if I can be the lawyer bad guy, again, some of the things that immediately come to mind are like FTC guidelines around, you know, sponsorship and sponsored content, LRB rules around, you know, kind of controlling the employees and what they say or don't say, making sure you actually own all those accounts that they're posting on, because, you know, that disgruntled employee leaves and doesn't want to give you back that password.
Why are we friends again?
I know I'm not the most fun at the cocktail party. Actually, I am going to get a couple more of these drinks in me.
Well, there you go. So what can I tell my employees? What can I tell my clients?
I mean, short answer, yeah, you want them to tout the company and you want them to, you know, shout it from the rooftops and say all those good things about you. But you also want to make sure that you own the content, you own the channels, and that, you know, you're not going too far in your rules when you're telling them what they can and can't say.
Well, I always advocate that my clients own their channels. We absolutely insist that they own their own website hosting. They own their own logins. It's their credit card on the account. Same thing with the Facebook handles, Instagram handles, accounts especially, and then LinkedIn, definitely. We insist that the owner, because we work exclusively with owner-led companies, the owner needs to own LinkedIn page. But there's restrictions and hurdles on you know, getting that posted and getting content. It is not realistic for the owners to generate all this content and post all this stuff. So, yeah, you know, and over time, the channels have been pretty good at dealing with issues of multiple contributors. But, you know, is that enough? If it's posted on the page, right, they own it.
Well, the rules around that can get a little bit tricky. And before I even go there, to your point, like, yeah, the owner of the company should probably own all those channels. But do you know how often I see, and I'm not even talking about like our older, more seasoned entrepreneurs, but even like relatively young entrepreneurs, they're like, I don't do all that social media stuff. I had, my junior intern set it up. I don't know what the password is. Or I bought the company and nobody remembers what the password is.
Who are these people that don't take ownership of these things?
I mean, I see it sometimes. I mean, because it's still an owner-led company, which is, well, what we both work with, but it's an owner that their interest and passion is really not the marketing. And if they can farm it off to one of these, young Gen Zers to do it for them,
Right.
they're happy to do that.
Well, I'm all about that. We can turn the cameras around and I'll show you my co-op here, who's from UC, who I'm happy to throw all this editing and stuff over on her. But that's very short-sighted, because anything you generate in the marketing realm is an asset. Just like the stuff that shows up on your P&L or balance sheet, and I'm showing my ignorance here because I let somebody else worry about that.
Hey, we all do what we're good at.
We have to do what we're good at.
We have to farm out some of the other stuff. And a lot of entrepreneurs are type A people, right? We need to learn to let go of some things.
I get that, but I still own the QuickBooks account. I still own the checkbook logins. I own the account logins, right? So there has to start at the top. It has to be owned by the company. These are valuable assets, and there's a very high value to that. Your SEO history, your website, there really is a high value. The CFOs haven't figured out where to put it in the financials yet, but I can definitely help you with that. It's not something you want to overlook. So in my mind, if it's my account, I'm owning it. Anybody theoretically can post on it.
I feel like the platforms sometimes make that a little bit difficult, but maybe you know better than I do on that end.
That is one of the things that I think people are not good at, is setting up the permissions. So regardless, whatever you want to see, whatever you want to post, whoever you want to see it, whoever you don't want to see it. I mean, do you realize if I don't want Maritza to see something on Facebook that I post about her, I can exclude her from that post.
I haven't been on Facebook in a while. What is she saying about me?
So, but you can be pretty granular in how you deliver this content. So it's ignorance if you don't. So how does it hold up in court? How does it hold up with the bank when you say, I didn't know that this was due today? I didn't know I had to pay this. I didn't know this was in the terms of.
I didn't know is never a legal defense.
Thank you.
Ever.
Thank you.
I'm sure somebody in the comments will tell me the one situation where I'm wrong, but you know what I mean. Generally speaking, it was never a legal defense.
I wouldn't put my money on it.
There's so much gray area and nuance in the law. Somebody will come up with the one time where I didn't know worked, but 99.9% of the time, I'd bet you dollars to donuts it's not going to work.
Right. So you need to be aware of these things. And even if you aren't posting or creating company-owned content, you do need to realize there are platforms out there where your employees are able to post anything they want that you may not see. So not being on Facebook, not being on Instagram, not having access to those things, you don't have to post it. You don't have to use it. You have to have access to it in case you do need to see something. But hello, Glassdoor.
Well, I was going to say, I'm sure we both had a client call us and go, oh my God, I just found the 1-star Google review or Yelp review. Can you get it taken down? And they call both you and me.
Right, right.
Demanding that it be changed.
Because nobody at Facebook will answer. I get
Ever. That. Ooh, boy. All right. This episode's going to go a lot of places. I have not had much luck, honestly, in getting those taken down. I mean, if you know who it is and you really can prove that it's defamatory, right? Mm-hmm. We can try the cease and desist route. But so often they're phrased in such a way that they're subjective. You can't really
Yeah.
prove. Everybody's kind of entitled to their opinion. There's nothing in there that is absolutely false, or they're saying things that are true. Maybe you dropped the ball with that customer or client. But my experience has been, yeah, you're not going to get Google to respond. You're not going to get Facebook to respond. And we've all been there where you've got frankly the client from hell. Nothing you do is going to please them or be good enough for them.
Right.
Is it even, sometimes I wonder, is it even worth calling attention to it? Or do you let all of your 5-star reviews kind of bury it?
The only person I know that's been completely successful in having things removed from Facebook is Trump. But we're not going to go there. So,
again, as I said in one of the previous episodes, you don't have billions of dollars to pay your lawyers to fight these fights. And
Exactly.
you're also not popular enough for your lawyers to work for you for free without getting paid.
True that. You also don't have the luxury of deciding that you're not going to appear on social media. End of story. So you can either take advantage of it, be aware of it, own it, or not. But do always advocate that the business owner owns the account. Buck stops here. I have had way too many horror stories of domain names, websites,
Phone numbers,
social media, email addresses, things that have been lost because the owner did not consolidate everything and understand the assets that they owned. Somehow never seemed to lose the keys to the fleet of service vans parked in the parking lot, but the passwords to these critical accounts, they don't have. So that's something you've got to take advantage of, or you've got to take control of. So if I'm doing that, then the content's being posted on my site. So I understand I can't always have everything taken down. So what's the defense to that?
good customer service.
I'm going to say the best defense is a good offense.
What do you mean?
Don't get yourself in that position. Use the platform to be positive. Use it to garner the good reviews. Use Google to encourage your customers to do a review, give you a good review on Facebook, on Google. Because if you do that, then that one bad egg that has a bone to pick with, whatever somebody didn't do right, it'll offset that. So, again, you have to go on the offense a little bit. Does that mean you need to be posting 5 times a day? No. But don't stick your head in the sand and ignore the conversation that's out there. This is conversation about your company that you need to be aware of. If you're not aware of it, you're not paying attention to it, you can't react to it. You can't react to your customers. You can't react to the market. It's a window. We can argue about whether it's a rose tinted window or a cobalt tinted window, but it is a window into the market. So our client will take advantage of this. Same way, claim the accounts. I don't care if you choose not to be active on Twitter. It does not make sense for a lot of my clients in particular, but B2B, business oriented customers, it not the first choice of platform, but at least grab the account, grab the handle, because if you don't, someone else can. And if someone else does, there's a lot of Sullivan solutions out there. Somebody who grabs that Sullivan solutions can say anything they want.
Right. You might not want that associated with your name.
Exactly. It doesn't necessarily give my prospects, my clients, any way to disassociate that from my company. So there's danger in that. But in terms of having employees contribute to this content, that's something else. I typically encourage my clients to encourage their employees to have LinkedIn accounts
Mhm.
that are branded. We usually don't go farther than a LinkedIn account, but I do encourage them to have their employees contribute to their Facebook and Instagram, because those kinds of posts are transparent, they're real, and they almost always do far better than anything the marketing department, whether it's me or somebody else, can contribute.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that makes a lot of sense. You want to be careful and make sure that you actually own that content that's being posted. You also want to be aware of what it is your employees are possibly saying about you. But I've also had clients where, they're kind of iffy about that because they don't want the employees getting a little too close to the customers or clients. Because if that employee leaves, they've got those relationships on LinkedIn or whatever social media platform, and they start trying to poach those people for the next company that they work for.
That's real, but I really believe you have to recognize what's real now. And if you're creating a culture, and I'm going to come back to where the premise of marketing from the C suite isn't just about your marketing, it's about culture that permeates your entire company. It's about what happens every day, it's about who your employees are. If you're truly embracing that, then you have to trust the employees. You're doing what's right to empower them, to enable them. If your employees cannot be happy, cannot be proud of the work they're doing, I would argue that you have the wrong employees, or you have the wrong brand and you have the wrong mission statement and premise.
So it's possible, yes, to your point, that if your employees are so unwilling to talk about your company and what they do and what they do at work, you're probably business.
So if your employees aren't on board, I honestly think that comes back more than ever to your brand and how you articulate that brand and how you perpetuate that brand or percolate the brand
Yeah.
where it permeates the company. And whether you're technically for profit or not nonprofit, your brand does define how your company operates.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the really weird or interesting things about all of this. Nope, totally lost my train of thought.
Oh, there's just one.
I completely lost my train of thought. That high west might have kicked in.
Well, I
Where were
can't
we
think of
going with
anything
this?
better to kick in than the High West.
Definitely drink to that. Sorry, what were we talking about?
So the brand, the purpose, the why.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I think in one of our earlier episodes, we talked a little bit about scaling. And one of the things that I've noticed that sometimes surprises entrepreneurs is when you start to scale, you have to market to potential employees just like you have to market to
Mm,
potential customers or clients. And that seems to
absolutely.
take everybody by surprise. And so to
It,
your point,
it may be the bigger marketing lift,
right. So
honestly.
to your point, you know, your employees should not be surprised by your why. That should have been.
So do I own it?
So
You
to
know,
give everybody the legal tidbit, anything that, so it's, especially when we're talking about ownership of content, right? We're really talking about copyright. And generally speaking, whoever creates it owns the copyright. Now, there is an exception if an employee creates it in the regular course and scope of their employment, right?
mhm.
Then it does belong to the company. So if that's part of your employee's job duties to create the social media post and get them out there, yes, by all means, that belongs to the company. What we don't want to do is be in a position of fighting over, well, was that in the course and scope of their employment or not, right? Like, that's what
Right.
we don't want to do. And so that's why so often as a part of either employment agreements or onboarding, we want the employees to sign something that says, oh, by the way, anything you create about the company, right, does in fact belong to the company. And same thing if you use independent contractors, technically they created it. They're really the owners of that content. And work for hire gets tossed around a lot, but it actually has a very narrow kind of definition. But we need something in those independent contractor agreements that'll specify everything you create as a part of this agreement is a work made for hire. And if it's not technically that under the law, then you are assigning those copyrights to the company so that we don't have to have these fights later about who does this belong to. Because the last thing you want, even as a small business, is you strike gold, this idea blows up, and now we're having a fight later about, well, who really owns it?
Well, and I know that's something you've written into the contracts that I use.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the reasons we have a rather intimidating agreement that we ask all of our clients to sign, because it says in that agreement, yes, the work that we provide on your behalf is work for hire, and you own that. I'm going to retain the right to say that we created it, talk about it, brag a little bit about it, but you own it, because I'm not going to have that conversation. I just don't need that headache.
Yeah.
And that's not the service I want to deliver.
Absolutely. And from a service standpoint, especially as a marketing company, I think it's what your clients expect, right? Like if I pay you to do the website,
Exactly.
I do own everything you put on the website. You didn't just copy and paste something from somebody else's website. I'm not going to get sued behind it later.
Now, that is a differentiator, and that may not be what you're getting from the freelancer you're hiring. That may not be
You're definitely not getting it from your freelancer off of Fiverr or Upwork.
That's part of the discussion we're going to have. That's definitely going to impact the pricing. I got to pay her, so
I got to pay her.
But that's all part of it, and that's how we differentiate ourselves. It's how you differentiate yourselves. It's some of that behind the scenes conversation. However, how does that impact the social media? Do I have to have that in job description? Then, as if I'm a typical W-2 employer, do I need to have that in a job description? I keep seeing more and more disclaimers when I go to an event. By paying for this ticket, I'm agreeing they can use my name, image, likeness. My dentist, for Pete's sake, I am fine with updating my records once a year. Here, fill this out. What's changed? Blah, 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 blah. There was, I'm going to say, a third of the page, a quarter of the page, all about if they take any images while I'm in their dentist's office, they own them. Whoa, not asking for a comment there. Just saying that's the world we live in.
No, I want to comment on that one because, and I haven't seen this particular language, so I'm making some assumptions here, right?
I was too busy Xing it out, saying, no, I don't agree. Otherwise, I would have taken a picture and sent it to her.
But I think that, there's certainly room to ask a good customer or client or patient if they're okay with that. A lot of times when I'm doing service agreements for marketing or consultants or whatever, I'll put in a clause that says, hey, can we use your logo or your name in our marketing materials? Can we say that you were a client of ours, right?
The irony here is I would have been thrilled for them to name me on their social media if they hadn't asked. But if I've got to sign up, hello,
contract, I'll tell the client, like, this is one of those things that you can take this paragraph out. You don't need to call me for that. Like, if your client is like, absolutely not, like, who knows where everybody's watching from, but, certainly there is the big university here in the city that absolutely not, they're not going to agree to that paragraph, right? You can take it out of that contract. That's fine. And in a day and age where name, image, and likeness is really a part of the vernacular because of everything going on, especially in college sports, yeah, you definitely want to ask, right? You don't want to get some petty lawsuit later on.
Right.
And God knows we live in a litigious society. There are a lot of petty lawsuits. So I totally get asking, but you ask. You don't just stick it in the contract and say, hey, while I've got your mouth open, will you sign this?
I should probably tell you who my dentist is because clearly she's paying a lot of money for all these words. You might need her.
Well, some of that, though, honestly, like there are some things that we do as attorneys because frankly, this is what the courts expect to see. So if this is the one in a million situation where this blows up in our faces and goes wrong, yeah, I
Yeah.
want all that stuff there just in case. But if we're being honest, we're really hoping it's a one in a million situation and we never have to look at it. That's why more and more, maybe I shouldn't say this, but more and more I start thinking about the work that I do, especially as like outside general counsel, where it's
Hmm.
very preventative. It's a lot like insurance. You're going to pay for it. You're probably going to hate paying for it because you'd probably rather pay for marketing.
Right.
But if we don't have it and something goes wrong, you're screwed,
Yeah,
right? Like
that's
you don't
true.
ever want to need your car insurance. You damn well better have it.
True that. And comment.
But I think that's a really good point about training your employees, which brings us kind of, full circle
And
back to like social media.
and your service providers, because I'm sure this was outsourced to a mailing department or a third party vendor who's mailing these out, because me and the other 10,000 people that got a test result that day,
Mhm.
right? They're not doing this from the CEO's, the CEO's secretary is not sending these out.
Well, and this is why, as you put it, you work with owner-led companies. I always call it like the passion person
Yeah,
because everything's not being outsourced to some generic third-party department, right? This is why we do the kind of work
right,
that we do.
right.
Um, but to your point though, I think that, bringing us back, that's why it's so important to train your employees, because if the employees are doing the social media posts or the marketing campaign or whatever it might be, yeah, we've talked about how important it is for you to own those accounts and own the content. What are you training the employees on when it comes to now? How do you respond
Right.
if somebody replies to that tweet or Instagram post?
And I'm going to bring that back to marketing from the C-suite, because not only is it training, it's preparation, it's having the words, it's understanding. But if you're not doing that, and the people aren't prepared to have those conversations, you're not preparing them, they aren't able to have those conversations with the one-on-ones that they're having, then absolutely you don't want them on social media. You don't want to trust them with that. But it's bigger than that. And if you're creating the culture, you're creating scenario that you really need to have to be an effective business, then there's absolutely no reason left why those people can't be a part of your social media.
Yeah, I think that works. I mean, if I'm going to push back and play a little bit of devil's advocate, it's the scenarios where, like I said earlier, people are real funny about their employees befriending customers and clients on social media. And it's because they're worried about that potential of solicitation later on down the road if that employee leaves.
Now that's fair. And I think you know, but again, I would advocate there are ways around that. Um there are a lot of branded accounts
Yeah.
that, so maybe it's not the personal account of, or maybe it's an alternate account. There are typically ways to handle this. I've seen lots of social provider or lots of service providers that have specific online accounts. The employees will go on and comment or share, or any number of interaction kinds of scenarios that are real
Mhm.
and very much appreciated. um, so it kind of comes back to owners understanding that the employees are assets, the marketing channels are assets, and you can obsess over the things that actually show up on the financials, but the things that show up on the personals are the things that a lot of times make the biggest difference.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think there's definitely something to be said for that, right? Because the number of followers you have on Instagram or Facebook, you're right, that doesn't show up on a balance sheet. But you best believe, your clients, your employees, people are talking about you.
They
Right?
are.
Even if you're just a small local business,
Yeah.
right? Somebody is talking about you. I mean, I think as a small business, reputation is even more important.
If they're
Like,
not
we
talking about you,
expect
you've
the
got a bigger problem.
yeah, like we expect a certain bit of red tape and BS from corporations, right? But as a
Right.
small business, your reputation is absolutely everything.
Yeah.
And so if you've got an employee that is willing to shout that from the rooftops, that's probably a really good thing. Because if I say it, I sound like I'm trying to sell you something, right?
Exactly.
If somebody else says it,
It is going to come from us as a kind of it's very marketing oriented. It's clearly canned, clearly prepared, and there's a time and a place for that. But the stuff that you get that in the moment comment or that share from your employees is so real and so valuable.
yeah. And I think the fine line is you want that authenticity, but you also want to train your employees so that they don't go so far off the cuff that they get you in the hot water. Right,
That's
like, as
fair.
a lawyer, a very obvious example, right? Even if I have a paralegal or a secretary working for me, you can't share attorney-client confidential information, but
Right.
it's my job to teach you as the non-lawyer that's working for me what that means and how that works and what we can and can't say, right? The ethics rules
Yeah.
get real funny about, calling yourself an expert, right? It's my job to teach my staff that. So there may be things in your industry or business, whether it's from an ethics standpoint, if you're a licensed professional, or even just a way that you want to represent your company. Are you the kind of company where you want Gen Z doing one of the viral TikTok dances, or are you
Right.
trying to present a very different image, right? Um, do you want your employee to, hey, we just signed this great new client. We got the contract. This is awesome. Like, whoa, whoa, we weren't supposed to say that. This is supposed to be
Right.
hush hush. That client didn't want us to use their name, right?
Yeah.
Or, to bring it back to employment law, we'll see situations where employees are kind of using social media to talk about concerns that they have about the company and the workforce. And, oh, they don't pay us enough, or my boss is a real jerk. They don't treat us well enough, and we need to do something about this. And some of those conversations start to veer into protected
Right.
space. And you're out here going, hey, you can't ever say anything bad about me. And it's like, whoa, that's a rule that goes too far.
Exactly. No, that's real. But they will find those places.
Yeah.
It kind of comes back to one of the catchphrases we have with marketing from the C-suite, which is documented, delegated, and done. The first part of that is documented, and not that we're going to go over the top on SOPs and process, but we do place a lot of emphasis on that because if you don't have a process, if you don't have a policy, you don't have these things in place, these guidelines, then you aren't setting expectations. You aren't giving your employees enough autonomy to do some of the things that they need to do. And you aren't giving yourself that safety net if they go over the line.
Yeah.
So
And that's where I think we kind of play together is, yeah, I want you to have those policies. I want you to run them by legal
that's fair.
because you can go overboard and get yourself into trouble when the policies try to go too far, or they can be interpreted in a way that goes too far. Um, or one of the common ones I'm seeing these days is, oh yeah, we let our employees do social media. They just dump everything in the chat GPT. Everything?
Yeah, right.
Was that confidential? Were they dumping it into the free version of chat GPT that says, hey, we can use any data you put in here to train our LLM?
Right.
Like, so then we start to get into, okay, what's your social media policy? How well are the employees trained on
Right.
confidentiality? What's your AI usage policy? So yeah, have the policy, but again, it's marketing and legal. It's never marketing by itself.
Nothing is ever out there by itself. It does require a combination of efforts. So I think what you've done is teed up actually very, very well a couple of subsequent episodes. I definitely want to do one. You made the comment, run it by legal. Well, those of us that have had some time in corporate America, we understand how that works. Those of us who have lived all of our lives in small business, run it by legal, suddenly we just start seeing cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. So I would like to do a deep dive on what general counsel really means, because I know that's one of the things that you advocate, that you're my general counsel, for example. I definitely want to dive into where that goes, what that means, why I need that, and where we go with that. The other piece of that is the IT piece.
Mm.
And we've had some conversations about AI. We've had some conversations about where the where security is. And I definitely like to bring in a guest or two on some of those issues, because that's huge, and getting it's big and getting bigger on the security of AI. You know, 2 or 3 years ago, 5 years ago, we had the bring your own device kinda, so it's
We're
sort
still
of,
having those issues.
so we still have those issues, and those are not going to go away, those are just gonna get worse, but the AI piece right now is Wild West, and,
Absolutely.
I see a lot of problems there, so I've got a couple of things in mind on that, but,
Yeah, we'll definitely have to tee that up because that whole piece, the law is not going to catch up as fast as technology is developing. And
no,
we need to be
no,
prepared for that. And if you
and
don't know what your employees are putting into one of these AI tools or chatbots, you're already behind the eight ball.
absolutely, because they are.
Yeah,
They are, and they may not even be aware of it, AI is way more prevalent than we realize, so
but the other thing I'm seeing, like even away from AI, but kind of going back to IT that we'll probably want to talk about is I'd say every probably month I get a call from a client where, okay, we had to let an employee go. The former employee is now super disgruntled and we've lost control. We've lost
yeah,
control of the device or the account, or they've got access to this or that, or this was on their personal computer. And some of that we can deal with legal policies, but to your point, some of that goes back to before you call me, call your IT like call your IT
right,
provider, right?
right,
Like they're
a
going to be able to help you out with this on a technical level that I can't.
and if you don't have one, that becomes a problem, so, there's cybersecurity issues,
Mhm.
and there aren't it's it not for none of these things is there one answer. These all have to be discussions with people you can trust, and so that's what we're trying to uncover here. Some of these discussions, some of the arguments as we go through these, and shed some light on the kinds of options you have. But you know what? You're going to have to keep having these conversations, because none of these things are static.
Absolutely not. I mean, the law is
So,
constantly changing, technology is constantly changing. What works from a marketing standpoint, whether that's your clients or future employees, is constantly changing. I mean, we've got what Gen Z coming into the workforce. I'm starting to feel old. Like,
well, if you're starting to feel old, then we're screwed. So, um, but that's what we're here to do, is talk about this stuff, not necessarily with the single definitive answer, but the good conversations.
hey, I will certainly drink to that.
Absolutely. I'm Karen Sullivan, trying to keep your brand scalable and honest.
And I'm Maritza Shay Nelson, trying to help put some of this legal stuff aside so you can focus on what you're really passionate about.
And if any of this resonated, reach out to us. We'd love to talk about it.
Absolutely. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, follow. What am I missing? Like all the stuff, all the social media algorithms tell you to do.
ExecutivePoorPodcast.com. We'll have it all there. It's easy.
And of course, we're on all your favorite platforms. We'll see you next time. Cheers.